The following features spoilers for Slender the Arrival. Link in the description. Slender the Arrival, one of the most 2013 games of all time. This came out during the crave of a man in a business suit. Back in 2013, you can escape this guy. I mean, he was everywhere, but I already touched on that in my previous video on the subject, so just watch that instead, because I don't see a point of repeating myself again. I know I just made a video talking about Slenderman on Roblox, though I'm still in the Slender mood, and this was the one Slender game I briefly touched on that I had never played. Yes, I've never played Slender the Arrival until December 26 in the year 2025. Wow, I'm late. It had been on my Steam wishlist for several years, and the winter sale going on as of writing a script, so I thought I'd finally give it a shot. I'm not going completely blind into this. I watched Markiplier's playthrough back when that was going on, and all I remember is the ending being disappointing. Well, now it's 2025. A new remastered edition came out back in 2023, free of charge for people who bought the game before, allowing you to switch between the original version and the remastered version through the Steam launcher. This remastered version got a complete visual overhaul. This looks incredible, especially the outdoor sections. The view of the mountains and the forest are just breathtaking. You can really see the differences between the original release and the remastered edition side by side. It's night and day. Furthermore, the sound design is spectacular. I think this was really showcased in the Abyss chapter, where one of Slenderman's proxies is hunting you around the map, and all you hear is her footsteps. With all that said, what about the gameplay? I'll be the first to admit that I enjoy looking at garbage if the game is great in every other department. Graphics don't really matter to me, and for this game, the gameplay is a roller coaster to say the least. If said roller coaster was a diagonal straight line with the starting point being the high point and the end point being inside the Earth's core. Slender the Arrival features several chapters. Let's go through the chapters that I think are worth talking about. The first one is the 8 Pages, which is obviously based on Slender the 8 Pages, a Unity game that came out back in 2012 that put Slenderman in the central spotlight, especially within the YouTube Let's Play community at the time. Anyways, we go around the forest collecting 8 pages and avoid the Slenderman. I actually quite enjoyed this section. I found Slenderman's AI to be a bit unpredictable, and I also liked how not only the page locations, but the landmarks and the spawn locations were randomized. They didn't have to do that, but I really appreciate the effort put into that, as it makes each playthrough have a much more interesting experience than just speedrunning to all the page locations. Good job. Next up we have Into the Abyss, where we find ourselves entering an abandoned mining operation, with our only escape being an elevator. The catch that 6 generators are needed to power it on. While looking for the generators, we're chased by one of Slenderman's proxies and the Slenderman himself. This level is fine. I felt like this is just a watered down version of the previous chapter, but has a new threat and a different collectible thrown in. I would argue that this threat is easier to avoid than Slenderman, because she's able to be held in place by using the flashlight, and you can take multiple hits from her before dying. In addition, I rarely encountered the Slenderman in this level, and most of the time he was a complete joke of a threat. Also in hardcore mode they made, you collect gas canisters in addition to powering the generators. Well, any addition on the surface level, this came off as a mediocre attempt at padding this difficulty mode instead of adapting and improving the level. After we escape using the elevator and go through a long walking section with a few chapters along the way, we get to the last chapter I consider noteworthy, this being the Arrival. In this chapter, we find ourselves trying to escape a forest fire while avoiding the Slenderman, with the added bonus of him having tentacles this time that move toward the player. Cool. Tentacles are okay. They move towards the player and they make a sound as they get closer to the player. I personally didn't find these as much of a threat, even on hardcore mode, as I never died to them a single time. I found this chapter to be my least favorite part of the game. It's just a game of random chance that you have to find the correct path up the mountain that isn't being blocked off by fire that is randomized on each playthrough. Also, the Slenderman just becomes an annoyance in this chapter. He just seemingly teleports in front of me multiple times, often blocking the only way of escape, so I had to backtrack just to get him to despawn. You know what's strange? Each of these levels get progressively easier the farther you get into the game. The hardest level is the 8 Pages being the first level where Slenderman can kill you. I'll admit that I got lost several times looking for the pages, which I would argue is good game design for a horror game like Slender. Although there's one question I have remaining. Why is the hardest level the first one you encounter, while the easiest level is the last chapter? That doesn't make any sense. Why would I play a game's hardest level first and the easiest level last? Should I play the easiest level first so I can prepare myself for the harder levels?
What were they thinking?
This is basic game design philosophy, and they somehow messed this up. Oh, and what happens after the forest fire level? Nothing. That's it. The game is finished. Clocking in at a playtime of only about an hour and a half on my first playthrough. There's some bonus content that I'll cover later in the video, but why is the main campaign so short? I mean, it definitely has its good moments. The rest of the chapters are just walking simulators or collect the collectible while avoiding a monster or two being thrown in that don't really pose any threat. I think this is really showcased in the escape chapter where you play as Kate, who's apparently our friend that we are going to help sell the house with at the start of the game. I think on the surface this is a neat concept, but this doesn't really add much other than an explanation on environmental elements and a little bit of background into one of the characters. You want to guess how long this chapter takes to beat? Take a guess. 15 minutes? 10 minutes? 5 minutes? No, 2 minutes. 2 freaking minutes. I even timed it myself. If there was one section in the game that could have used some padding, it was this chapter. But no, we gotta save that for the mediocre collectathon for a single difficulty mode. What a joke. Despite these criticisms, I actually liked the Homestead chapter. We play a CR who's a mutual friend of Kate and uncover the secrets of the Madison farm. And if you were paying attention, the kid from the start of the game, who's a missing poster, lived here at one point. This chapter was a nice change of pace from the previous chapters and was unique from the rest of the game in a good way. I also really like the cellar area. That legitimately scared me the first time I went down into it. If you don't see a pattern yet, most of the game is just a walking simulator. I don't dislike walking simulators. I actually think we've gotten some good games from this genre, such as Amnesia: The Dark Descent, one of my favorite horror games of all time. Though what it lacked in gameplay, it definitely made up for it in its well-written story. I often find some of my favorite games of recent memory to be those that provide an eagerness to progress to find out what's going to happen next in the story if said story is written well. Though I must admit, I got lost a few times with the story, though it was fixed on my next playthrough when I was getting all the achievements. More on those later. The collectibles are the primary way of presenting the story, with there being a total of 60 of them. However, some of them were quite hidden, such as this piece of paper in Kate's room beside the trash can that blends in with the rest of the environment. Don't get me wrong, I love me some games with good stories, such as the BioShock series, though I felt like the story was a bit too big for what it was trying to set out to be. With how short the game is, it's hard to establish a well-meaningful story, while also trying to balance the gameplay sections in the mix. Overall, Slender the Rival's main story and base game were okay. Definitely not terrible, but sort of like a 7 out of 10 game for me. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I played some fantastic 10 out of 10 games like Joker's Show, Horror Escape.
Gotcha!
I think this game could have greatly benefited if there were at least a couple more chapters. Also, this game is normally $20. Why? Would you rather pay $20 for a game that takes an hour and a half to beat, or the Valve Complete Pack when it goes on sale for basically the same price? You get Half-Life 1, the expansion packs, and 2, Portal 1 and 2, Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, and many other games that are held as some of the best games in their respective genres. Please tell me what you're picking. Actually, I take it back. I'm going with option number 3. For such a short game, $20 is way too much. This game goes on sale for $7 quite often, but even then, that's pushing it a little bit, though I think there's an argument to be made considering the visual improvements and the new content added. Oh yeah, they also added a new chapter titled Nightmare. No, not that Nightmare. That one is great. This one sucks. This legitimately feels like one of those horror games some kid made in a few hours on itch.io. Slenderman is barely featured in this bonus chapter, aside from this one area and at the start to jump scare you. Both, I'm pretty sure, are scripted. Instead, it's centered around Charles Matheson Jr.'s father. In this new chapter, we walk down the most linear hallways imaginable to try and escape the hospital we seem to have woken in. Also, the water monster from Amnesia: The Dark Descent makes an appearance. For some reason, this chapter is not worth playing. Don't even bother unless you want to waste 15 minutes of your life. One more thing I wanted to touch on are the achievements, because for some reason, I enjoy putting myself through torture a lot. Achievement hunters, I would recommend 100%ing this game. It's pretty easy with no particular achievement being super difficult. Only achievements of note that may give you some trouble are Fearless and Retro Fan. With Fearless requiring you to beat the game on hardcore mode, I only died a couple times on the 8 pages chapter and I was able to complete the rest of the game with no issues. The Retro Fan achievement requires you to beat the Genesis chapter on hardcore difficulty. Again, I died a few times, but you can find guides online of the most efficient routes to take and it's pretty easy if you just stick to those. The Genesis chapter is unlocked after being the main campaign. This chapter is literally Slender the 8 pages made with assets from Slender the Rival. I have to admit, this is probably the coolest thing from this game, other than the base game itself. The developers really didn't have to add this in here. It's a nice bonus and a decent time waster to play for a few minutes. I should also mention the difficulty settings. You have easy, normal, and hardcore mode, with hardcore mode being unlocked after you beat the game once. Why is this a thing in games? Why do I have to beat the game once to play a specific difficulty mode? I've never understood this logic. I guess it's to extend playtime, but most players are probably going to play the game once and never again. Also, why is easy mode the default? And it's hidden in the settings. Most games will tell you up front what difficulty you want, so why is this hidden in the settings? I know Half-Life 2 did the same thing in its menu, but at least the default was normal difficulty, the mode most people are going to play on. The majority of people probably aren't going to play on easy unless they don't play video games somewhat frequently. I'm not even hating on there being an easy mode, I just don't think it should be the default in the settings. Now I know I may have been pretty negative in this video, more so than my usual output of content, but I did overall have an enjoyable and a fun experience in Slender the Rival, and at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. I can critique and nitpick it all I want, however, I think it's still worth your time. Only on a sale though, $20 is ridiculous. I know this video is different from my previous uploads, but I am working on the next episode of Roblox's Best Horror, though consequently that's taking a little longer than I had planned. I hated not putting anything out on my channel for you all to watch, so I hope you all enjoyed this. If you did enjoy this style, let me know in the comments because I had quite an enjoyable experience making it. Also, happy 2026! I apologize for not getting an upload like I'd promised for December, but I kinda just wanted some time off with Christmas as I felt a bit overworked and needed some time off for my personal life. Anyways, with all that out of the way, I'll see you in the next video.